is that psychopathy is a condition. It's a psychological condition. A lot of times we use the word, oh, that person's a psycho, just to say that they're crazy. But there's more to it than just that. It's a condition that seems to be genetic, and it seems that a lot of people, not a massive number, but a significant number of people will have a genetic marker that indicates that we're susceptible anyway to psychopathy. But psychopathy has to be triggered within usually the first 5 years with some sort of a traumatic experience. So for example, any of you guys watch the TV show Dexter? You've seen it before? It's on Netflix. Yeah, essentially it's about a guy who's a serial killer, and he's identified early on by his stepfather, or I guess his adopted father, as being a psychopath. And so his stepfather tries to direct him so that he will kill the right kind of people. So other murderers, serial killers, things like that. So he gives him a code to go by. His father, who is a police officer, explains to him how to get away with this stuff. And so Dexter, as he grows up, he becomes a member of a forensics team in Miami. So he does like blood spatter. So he knows like how people get caught and stuff like that. So he goes through, and he's a very successful serial killer. So as the show explains, what happens is that when he's a little boy, his mother is involved with some criminals, and she becomes an informant. The people who she's informing on find out, so they murder her with a chainsaw, and they do it in front of Dexter. And so Dexter's only 3 years old. The police show up at the scene. They find him like sitting in a pool of his mom's blood and all that. And when the show begins, he doesn't know why he is the way that he is. And then as the show progresses, he finds out that this is what happened to him. And then he starts to remember it because of his repressed memories. And it seems to be that in that show context, that's the traumatic thing that kind of engages his genetic switch for psychopathy. Now, it doesn't have to be something that dramatic, by the way. There's another case of a kid up in Canada, and I don't remember his name off the top of my head, but you can look it up. You can find it online. You can see who he actually is. There's a documentary about him, but because he was a minor, they had him like in silhouette, but you can find out who the guy actually is. And the kid is the first in Canada to have been diagnosed officially as a psychopath. And so these interviews you're watching with him, essentially what happened was he was living with his mom and dad when he was a baby. His mom and dad got divorced, and his mom got custody. His mother was very strict. His father was the complete opposite. Plus, his father seemed to have a significant level of contempt for his mom. So he kind of raised the son seemingly to have contempt for mom. And so he, as he grows up, he doesn't want to live at home anymore. So when he's 15 years old, he decided to murder a classmate because he wanted to get away from his mom. That was why. That's the only reason. So he figured, if I steal a car, they'll put me in jail for a few months, and I have to go back and live with my mom. But if I murder somebody, I'll go away for a long time, and I won't have to live with my mom anymore. So he murdered a classmate, not because he didn't like the classmate, not because he hated him, not because he was particularly mean to him or anything like that. It was just, yeah, I think I can murder him and go away from my mom's house for a while. So he didn't really try too hard to cover it up. He kind of wanted to get caught. But this is the idea, is that he's somebody who has a complete lack of empathy for others, is severely emotionally detached. And if you look at what it was that may have triggered that, the traumatic experience that triggered it before 5, it seemed like it was just his parents' divorce, and then that unsettling separation of the two. So you've got two, obviously one fictional, one real life, two very different kind of genetic triggers, experiential triggers for why it is that this person is a psychopath. One because his parents were murdered, one because his parents divorced. This makes sense. And so when she's giving us these traits, she's again giving us an umbrella of all these things that they fall under. So for example, Machiavellianism. People high in Machiavellianism are duplicitous, cunning, and manipulative. So these are some traits that you're going to notice from a psychopath. They place a higher priority on power, money, and winning. And they easily disregard moral and social rules, and as a result, lie to others and manipulate them with little to no guilt. And then they give us some examples here that you may or may not recognize just from old movies and things like that, like Wall Street, or maybe you guys watch House of Cards. And these are people who are duplicitous, two-faced, cunning, and they're also manipulative. And the idea is that they are this way because they don't see people, because they lack empathy, they don't see people as people. Like if you look at a person, you have to understand that they have the same kinds of loves and hates and passions and everything just like you do. They have a background, they have family who cares about them, they have all of these things going on. A psychopath doesn't, and then if you understand that, then you have an empathy for them. And if you've experienced what they're experiencing, there's an empathy that's there. Psychopaths have very shallow emotions, and the emotions that they do have tend to be very self-centered, selfishness and things like that. So because they don't see people as, the same as them as people, well, that's why you manipulate them, because they're just a thing in the world to be manipulated. Like you need to open up a door to get outside the door, so you use the door to exit a room. It's just a thing that you use. A person operates in the exact same way that you treat a person the same way as you treat a door, let's say. And then, of course, two-faced, because, the same idea that people don't deserve honesty and loyalty in the same way they think that they deserve it. So, questions about that section? Take a look at the next one.